A very good evening to you and many thanks for joining us on PowerWER. It is the month of May in a unique year that humanity across the globe are facing an enemy to life, and as the war against corona continues, what has come out evidently is that humanity never loses hope as long as they still have breath in them. As that continues, Kenyan political landscape is currently facing new developments ranging from tussles in political parties and the looming referendum, which so far has got proponents who have different ideas on the best approach to achieve it. One, we have Jeremiah Kioni Bill, the MP from Daragwa, who is the chairman of Constitution Implementation Committee, has come up with a bill which has already been gazetted. We also have a bill led by Baringo North MP William Cheptumo, who is the chairman of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament. And another one which is being awaited is a bill emanating from the BBI team. Tonight we look into the opportunities and challenges that the referendum presents to Kenya and whether the country can still achieve what is lacking through other means apart from referendum. On the show, we are joined by Mr. Frederick Sasia, a policy analyst, and Mr. Dan Orogo, a political commentator. Power Brief begins right now. My name is Cornelius Omuse, and I welcome you to join us till the end of this discussion. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to our show.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you doing, both of you?
Great. It's the first time I'm here, and I'm glad and happy to be here.
Nice seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Now, briefly before we embark on our topic of the day, we want to look into this dilemma that is facing a lot of people outside there, that is the parents, the Ministry of Education, and students, stakeholders, and even the pupils. The people are talking of reopening back schools, and there are those ones who are saying do not reopen until everything comes to normal. So briefly, we want to see how everything is happening in your place, if the students are having their learning processes happening through online means and what have you. So we begin by Mr. Orogo.
Okay. Well, it's within the public domain that the pandemic has gripped every sector of this nation, ravaging and ending from any institution that we could ever imagine before. One of the important things that we mentioned, first of all, that safety comes first before any other thing. And so the announcement of the lockdown and everything, and even shutting down of the schools, was to safeguard the lives of our young children, who we, preeminence as the future of this country. It is also important to note, Cornelius, that we are engaging into a curriculum-based, a competency-based curriculum that requires a lot of comprehensive, structuring it. But one of the things that happens, and one of the things I keep on insisting, is that COVID-19 has exposed the underbelly of the performance of different institutions. And so far as we speak about education, you realize that before, the government had massively launched an electronic, an online education system that were piloted in different parts and different sectors of this country before. And as we speak, it's either due to technical challenges, due to the reach of electricity, and other measures that were not really considered before, it hit a snap. And as we speak, all those gadgets are gathering dust in some shelves in those schools. So the point is, if now we have the Kenya curriculum of the education curriculum that have embarked on measures to do an online,
the KICD.
The KICD. How the important point is, what is the access, what is the reach in the areas that are informal within the city or peri-urban areas, and areas that are home. So if you compare the way our young people who are through education system are consuming education, there is a disparity. Lastly, you saw in the parliament, we're talking about one of the members of the parliament was saying that this COVID-19 has made education be a disparity, in that those who are within the city center who can access the gadgets and their parents can afford to pay those who can do tuition are already moving. But the disparity is that some of the huge chunk of our students and our pupils are not being educated. So there is a disparity that will actually emerge as we see forward.
So your proposal from your end, do you want that after the end of this pandemic, when the students resumes, do they begin from where they left at, or do they continue from where it is assumed that all of them have access to education through online and electronic means?
I think recognizing the fact that I'm not really an educationist, but trying to give my opinion is the fact that when schools resume, my measure would be to have a remedial for all the pupils. Either way that can establish a platform where the teachers can engage and can assess.
Doing an assessment.
Yes, use an assessment if they are all at the same playing field, if they're at home. And that would require a lot of energy and a lot of investment into it. And it is important to do, because if we assume that all of them were receiving education at home, then we are deceiving ourselves. And also, if we are saying that or everybody was behind, then we are not able to have a standard upon which we engage. So I think it is important for an assessment. If we are going to relax on the measures and make sure that our safety nets are taken consideration in regards to COVID-19, so that all the pupils and the learners begins from a relatively, of course we cannot have an equal, but then a relatively equal playing field for education system.
So that at least they can compete among themselves.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Mr. Sassia, as far as education is concerned with this corona pandemic.
Thank you very much. But for me, it is a choice between the health of the nation and the wealth of the nation. Those who are fighting for the education to come back, or for the students to go back to school, I think they're just being blind to the fact that coronavirus is a serious pandemic. It is not in Kenya alone that schools have closed. Worldwide, go to the United States and even other countries. Schools have closed, not because somebody wanted them to close, but because we have a scenario in which we want to keep our children safe at home. So for me, I look at it differently. Education, the main purpose of education is to achieve knowledge. It is not really the curriculum. But we've turned our education to mean exams and the curriculum. So we really want our children to be in school for a certain period, not disregarding the fact that they are supposed to have the knowledge. So for me, I look at it and say that even if this pandemic goes for a future that we are not able to think about, but then when it is over, we can resume from where we stopped. Because all we want is our students to have the knowledge, not to have gone through the curriculum. We are not fighting the 365 days that we call a year. We are fighting the knowledge. We want at the end of the system that when we do have complete access, assessment of the students, we are able to tell that they have achieved the purpose of education, not the purpose of time. But most of us are looking at this thing depending on time, that we forecast we are going to have exams in October. Now the pandemic has eaten 3 months of our time. We are forcing exams to come on October. But we've had a situation in this country where teachers have gone on strike, let's say even for 3 months. But to exams, we've pushed them forward. Or rather, we've come up with modalities on how to cover what was lost. So for me, I think the stakeholders, both the government, the Ministry of Education, the parents, and even the students, they should come together and think of a way in which they can compensate for the lost time. But again, there's the discussion of those students at home are getting knowledge through the online means of learning. That is a complete hogwash. We understand, first in this country, the access to internet. Even those who live in the capital city, those who live in the cities in Kenya, still the access to internet is a problem. First, the accessibility, the speed, and the cost of the internet in this country. You cannot tell a parent who has 3 children in the house to buy internet that goes at around 100 shillings daily for his kids, rather than buy unga for them to eat. There are those students who have been displaced by the floods, who do not even have a place to call home. You are telling that parent that your student can learn online. Come on, they don't even understand what is online. They don't even understand what is internet. Their phones were swept away. They have those small phones that we call kabambe. So let us look at the education aspect as a system to gain knowledge, but not really a system to fight time. This 1 year per class, was it a scientific study, somebody who came up with that idea? So we can change the education curriculum and timing and extend it and even have exams in January. There's no problem with that.
So according to Mr. Sassia, let us fight the pandemic first Then once you overcome it, that's when we can look into education matters.
Yes, for me, we should prioritize the health of our nation, because even if we force our students to go back to school, then let's say we have a new wave of the virus maybe in schools, and you understand also the congestion in our schools. You cannot tell our children that they can go to school and have social distancing. You cannot tell them that they can go to school and have masks. The government once promised that they will be buying books for students. It has been a problem. So even if we talk of masks, I still think the government will not provide masks and those other things. So let us keep our children safe at home. Once we are through in this pandemic thing, or once we are able to contain it, then we can resume education.
Mr. Orogo, briefly, do you say that let's focus on the health, as Mr. Sasi is saying, and then once we are done with the calamities and the pandemics, we now go back to education, or we run them concurrently?
Well, I think the handling of COVID-19 has been put to question over a number of times, and it's either fortunate or unfortunate that even some segment of Kenyans still don't believe that this thing is with us, and they think that it's just maybe some media and some government calculations somewhere bringing into these figures. I also want to put in the fact that let us be aware that we are enrolling a new curriculum, right? And all we are putting into consideration that we should not, like he said, we should not be looking at it in terms of rolling a curriculum. But then how then do we make our system where there is a knowledge base? That is why it's called competency based. Not really in terms of trying to catch up with them, but then how would learners take advantage to holistically, bring up themselves? But the question is, even countries that have been worstly hit, my brother right now, are embarking on measures to an exit measure for COVID-19, even though they are still having some cautionary, measures, but they already have a plan spelled out how they would make the institutions recover, including the education institutions. So I think it's for us to begin to learn from them, and because at the end of the day, we have a curriculum that is it's quite new. And for it to, to be mature and for it to have a stabilization, something needs to be going on. My argument is the fact that we still have a problem with the mind's connection electricity. We have a problem on knowledge-based how to work with those gadgets. That is true. But then we have an opportunity and a mandate, responsibility to make sure that our learning institutions do not get shut for a long time in the suspect that we are waiting. Nobody knows when the virus is gonna, we are going to relax these measures. But it's important to have the measures of an exit strategy, including resuming back our educational system and all other systems.
Through whichever modes.
Yeah.
Many thanks, guys. The ministry, the stakeholders, and even the parents and every other person outside there have had your input, because all of us have to come together and see how solutions can be found. Now, straight away, we go to our tonight's topic. And just a disclaimer, whatever is being discussed here is not the position of CAC TV, but it is personal opinions on what someone thinks about this particular topic that we're going to handle. Continue watching Power Brief on CAC TV. Now, guys, there is this referendum question. And right now, we are having the bill having been gazetted in the Kenya Gazette. Now, does the country require a referendum?
From where I sit, I think a referendum process is not a problem to any country, because a constitutional making process is a continuous process. No country has a constitution that you can say it is complete. So whichever the case, the discussion around us having a referendum is not anything to cause any worry. But for me, I'm looking at it at a different perspective. That what is it that we want to change in the constitution?
We are coming there. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Daniel Orogo,
Yeah.
do we require referendum as at now?
My personal opinion is that there is no need for a referendum right now. For the fact that there is other issues that the proposed referendum, the purported referendum really address that are already in the foundational documents that we have.
We'll get there.
Right.
What was your foundation or your argument?
My argument first was looking at the 2010 Constitution. We had the no and yes teams that discussed the 2010 Constitution. And you remember very well those proponents of the yes on the 2010 Constitution were saying that let us pass this document. Then after we've passed it, we are going to have changes on it. We know it has some problems, but we will pass it and then have changes because 80% of it was okay. But they were arguing about 20% that they thought was not right. The other side thought, and unfortunately, the side that thought the Constitution, the 2010 Constitution was not right, are the guys who have been the government now implementing the same Constitution. But some of them now believe that we need to do some changes in the Constitution. But for me, I think if we have really to look at what are we proposing to change the Constitution,
Exactly.
it is so much valid for me to change the Constitution if the proposals are so valid and are things that all of us can agree. Not even if all of us, but majority of us can agree that we need to change the Constitution for this and this to happen. So there's no problem on my side for us having a referendum.
Now, Mr. Orogo had a contrary opinion, and there was something he was saying as far as this referendum is regarding it. Now, why are you not for the referendum idea as at now?
Well, I believe that one of the constitution we have is progressive, and since it's a progressive constitution and the one that we have been proud of as one of the best constitution we ever have, and I've heard these from different experts, but I've also have my own personal opinion why I think we have a very progressive constitution that addresses. The problem that we have is we have never hold to task our political class to make sure that the dictates, the spirit and the letter of the constitution that as currently we have is adhered to. What does that speaks about us as a country and as voters? It simply say that we are living in a political governance system where our founding documents are not important if the politicians doesn't think they're important. All these suggestions that have been put on board, reading through, and when you're reading, you are giving us, we are having a preliminary, you talked about different proposals, but I also want to take you behind to the Punguza Mzigo. It's one that was brought forward, and if you read through it, it had more explanations than the ones that we are purporting to be amending right now. So for me, it is from 2010. I think is around 10 years after the Constitution. And I think that most of the institutions, most of the dictates, most of the processes have been mutilated and have not been adhered to. So what makes us think that by purporting to change it to make it better would make it better? Lastly on this, the proponents of change constitution in different political wings and different political, those beating drums about the change of the constitution, and I agree with what he said to some extent, had actually, cast their doubt on the old constitution that we had. They said, if you, and I quote the Honorable, the former Prime Minister, said that if you look keenly at that old constitution, it had been ratified so many times that even if it looked like a cloth, it could always be torn. That is exactly what we are beginning to do with the current constitution. And I'm not saying that it's really, but then in what context are we proposing that change constitution would work better for us right now?
We'll get there. Now, Mr. Sasya, we want to establish a foundation for our topic tonight because there are two things here on the table. That is Cheptumo, the chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament. And we have Jeremiah Kioni, who is actually the chair of Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. These two people want this referendum to happen. But in law, it is said that if there's no procedure, there is no law. Once you flout the procedure, then the law will be flouted at the end of the journey. So these two people have got different ways on how they want this thing to appear. And let's actually go through it one by one. First, Jeremiah Kioni, on the date of the referendum, he says that let it be held alongside the general election that is in 2022. That is it. But when it comes to Cheptumo talks of 90 days. 90 days after presidential proclamation. If the president proclaims it tonight, then after 90 days, let's have the referendum. That is according to Cheptumo. When we come to the framing of the question, where you are trying to take us there, though prematurely, framing of the question, what is it? Should people walk without shoes, or what is it? Framing the question. Kioni talks of 14 days, Cheptumo 21 days, a range of 7 days, which we don't know what is informing these changes. Now we go down petition, that Sasia is dissatisfied, or Orogo is dissatisfied with how the process has been handled. Kioni talks of 21 days for someone to go and petition. Then we have Cheptumo talking of 28 days, another difference of 7 days. Then there is something here now where Punguza Mzigo ilikutana na mlima somewhere, the county referendums. Cheptumo spoke about it, that after it has gone to the national level, the counties also have to sit down and agree that we are going for this thing. But Kioni hasn't mentioned on his bill. Let's go to the results, declarations. Kioni talks of 48 hours, and then Cheptumo talks of 7 days. Now, your views as per the two bills. Are these people keen to achieve the same thing, or there is something in between them? Beginning with Sasia.
If you look at the Kioni bill and the Cheptumo bill, you realize that politics is playing part, because the two guys are kind of competing. Whatever this guy is saying, the other one is opposing. And looking at Cheptumo bill, Cheptumo is the chairperson of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, which is purely mandated to have been produced the bill way before, even before this discourse. But now Cheptumo has been sitting on the bill, I don't know for political reasons or what, around a year and plus. Now he comes and hears that Kioni has brought a bill. Cheptumo now resurfaces with another bill. Comparing the two bills, you realize that it looks to me that Cheptumo took the Kioni bill, and when he was drafting he was drafting with Cheptumo, with the Kioni bill at hand. Because everything Kioni says, Cheptumo says the opposite. Like the 14 and 21 days, the 21 and 28 days. Why have a 7 days difference? Now, you look at Cheptumo bill, he seems not really coming to reality with what the country is going through. You cannot propose to have a constitutional referendum separately with the general election within 2 years, because the cost of holding a referendum is too high. I would go for the one that runs concurrently with the general election. But the whole discussion, looking at it, you see politics at play. Remember, Cheptumo is a close ally to the Deputy President William Ruto. And you look at Kioni, is an ally or is a member of the Kieleweke faction of the Jubilee government. So you see politics playing part. You don't see some kind of genuineness in them. And you've seen also people like Mbadi, the minority whip, commenting on the same, saying that Kioni bill had delayed and now is coming to compete. Not Kioni, sorry. Cheptumo bill delayed and now it is coming to compete the Kioni bill. You see such people commenting and you realize this is politics. And they seem not so much genuine on the referendum, but so much concentrating on the political affairs to settle the Jubilee and Jubilee, the two factions of Jubilee and opposition, whatever fracas. So look at the whole thing. I think our politicians are not just fair enough. Our politicians are not genuine. They should have brought this thing as one. They can sit together and discuss and bring us one bill. But that all said, the House Committee, the House Business Committee is the one to decide which bill will come to the House. So we are all looking at that committee to at least do some justice to the citizens and spare us those drama and whatever Jubilee and opposition dramas, and let us have a serious discourse. Let us have a discourse that is purely based to help the common mwananchi and not the political class.
Let's hear from Mr. Orogo. Why two people holding these constitutional legal committees coming up with different approaches just to achieve the same thing? What are you reading from with a third eye?
One is the supremacy of which committee reigns supreme when it comes to guiding the constitutional process. That is what is happening between them. JLAC the fact that it has a justice connotation, legal affair in it, would want to reign supreme and say that matters of legal issues that finds its way in the National Assembly and the country must pass through this process. Kioni's committee also on the Constitution and Oversight Committee would also want to show, their political chest that, everything that comes with the ratification of constitutional must, pass through this committee. But then it's also like he's mentioned, I think the whole hilabaloo is just trying to, have a concoction about the days and concord it to appear to be working and being relevant, in the whole discourse about the constitutional change. And I would look it into the lens of, who plays in the gallery behind, who has an upper hand that we never see directing these committees. Because that then requires, we speak in the context of what we are discussing, is that there is a big hand that plays behind these committees. It doesn't just happen like that. You are aware that a parliamentary committee is a quasi-judicial committee. It means that it has the power like that of the court to direct how things happen. And that is how some of them summon other people. So the functioning and performance of these committees must be read within the semi-autonomy that they have in their decision. Now, coming back to the discussion about how we go about it, ideally, we would propose that a sixth question be put into a ballot. Ideally, Kenyans would really want that to happen, because my thinking is that now that with the adverse effects of COVID, we wouldn't imagine having some finances running into billions, again directed for a referendum. Unfortunately and realistically, this is what is going to happen. And I would like to assure you, and we would want to come back to this panel again. You see, these two proposals are not going to find their way. The proposal that is going to find their way in the National Assembly is BBI. And these two committees are going to be asked to tailor their proposal based on the Building Bridges Initiative bill that finds its way in the discussion of the House. So suffice to say that at the end of the day, it's all about, like my brothers mentioned, who is pulling the strings when it comes to upsetting and directing the whole functioning. But remember, there is a catch in that the country relies on the Election Act. We still don't have a referendum bill or a referendum act. So the purpose is either way what the system or what the political system is going to decide is they're going to question in the proposal by these two committees, and they're going to mutilate the function, because they're going to tell you there is no referendum bill to guide your proposals. Wait until we have a referendum bill to have a proposal, and then we factor in the BBI and ask all the committees to channel their proposals in the Building Bridges Initiative. Remember also that we do not have a functioning IEBC that takes, is spearheading the referendum. Right now, you saw what happened yesterday. The results that were posted in their portal has been contested and has been removed. And I'm telling you that the next purge is going to happen within the members of the IBC.
We shall look into IBC in our second part of the show. Okay. Now, it seems the two of you are concurring. Let there be the sixth question in the 2022 polls.
Well, I have not really say. I have said that is my ideal. That is my thing.
He also brought up such
but I think realistically,
yes,
politically, legalese, that is going to be overtaken by events.
Okay, many thanks. Gentlemen, we are going for a short commercial break. We will be coming back in a short while to focus on this matter. What is the likeliest question to be framed over this matter of the referendum? And how further can it take this country, as the country is only 2 years away from the general election, and not only a general election, but a succession politics, because President Uhuru Kenyatta constitutionally is to retire in the year 2022. Keep it on CAC TV. Remember, this debate is also live on our Facebook page, that is CAC TV Kenya. You can also engage us on our YouTube, that is CAC TV Kenya, and our Twitter handle is CAC TV_Kenya. Keep it on CAC TV.